This is the 18th season of Bass Talk Live. With your host, Matt Pangrath. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Bass Cat Boats, AFCO, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, and Pro Guide Batteries.
BTL, coming at you!
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk about bass fishing and bass boats and fishing history and all sorts of cool stuff today. Always one of the favorite guests, a longtime supporter of BTL and a guy that I always enjoy talking with on the phone. After I get off the phone with him, I'm always like, I don't know how he gets anything done because it's always like a 45-minute, hour-long conversation, very engaged, always learn a lot, and that would be president of Bass Cat Boats and Yarcraft, Mr. Rick Pierce, from his office in Arkansas. So we will get to Rick here in a minute. A couple little housekeeping tips and things that are going on in the world of professional bass fishing. We have 3 new additions to the 2023 Bassmaster Classic, which will be in Tennessee this upcoming March. Will Davis Jr. wins the Bass Nation Championship on Pickwick. Really tough Pickwick. Brutally tough Pickwick. If that name sounds familiar, it's because of his dad, William Davis. He's the one who started the Davis Bait Company. And kind of a funny story there. One of the first articles that I ever wrote. One of the first articles that I ever wrote back in the day for Bass West magazine was a profile on Davis Bait Company. And at the time, Will Davis Jr. was like in high school and I think was trying to figure out on where he was going to fish collegiately. And now he's has the potential to fish the Bassmaster Elite Series should he choose, and also is in the Bassmaster Classic, $20,000. Had like a 16-plus pound bag on the final day. So big shout out to Will Davis Jr. Wednesday's guest actually knows him pretty well, I think, and that would be none other than Ken Duke, who will make an appearance on Wednesday on BTL. Tristan McCormick tomorrow on BTL to talk about returning to the Classic after his Bassmaster Open win a couple weeks ago in South Carolina. On the MLF side, a lot of changes in the, I guess, leadership or top down. I've got a press release that they came out with Wednesday after the show. Jim Wilburn stepping down as president and CEO, moving into a semi-retirement role with MLF. Don Ruck stepping down as the MLF executive vice president and general manager at the end of the year. He will remain active with the company as an executive advisor. And Boyd Duckett is now the president and CEO of Major League Fishing, including all tournament operations and support staff. And then they came out with the 80 anglers who are fishing in the 2023 Bass Pro Tour, and Duckett is on the list. So I guess he is the, what did I have it here? He is the president and CEO and head of all tournament operations and support staff, and he's competing, which led me down a wormhole to see in the history of professional sports, has there ever been, there's been like a manager, player, or an owner that has played too. But my question is, has there ever been like a league owner or president or anything that has also played in the league? And I haven't been able to find that, but there's a number of different owners for Major League Fishing who all compete. But the best I could come with was Athletes Unlimited Softball, which is currently going on right now. And it's this, they have this weird deal where like the players all own it and then they get points based on how they played. So they have individuals and then they play on teams. It's crazy. Anyway, Let's get to our guest today. I'm excited for this one. I have a list of things that I wanted to cover, and whenever we have Rick on, we never actually follow the script. But heck, that's the way it goes. Rick, thanks for joining us. BTL, president of Bass Cat Boats. Rick Pierce, how are you doing? Thanks for jumping on BTL this morning.
I'm pretty good, man. Thanks for having me this morning here, Matt.
It was. Are you a Googler, Rick? I mean, I know you have a crazy amount of knowledge in your head, but are you one of those guys who, when something piques your interest, you hop on the computer and go down the Google wormhole to try to find out more about it?
I think everybody does that today. I'm not as bad as some. I've got guys that work here for us, and they'll say something right away. They're on their phone Googling it, and I'm not that bad. But no, if I'm interested in something, I'll do the research.
I feel like you have a lot of research like in your head, like the stories that you're able to come up with in your mind are you're kind of like your own Google machine, especially when it comes to the history of bass fishing and boating.
Yeah, God bless me with a lot of retention, I guess. My memory's pretty good, and so I get to remember things, and that's just fortunate. I mean, I tend to remember a lot of things, so places,
We scheduled this out. Heck, we scheduled it out like a month in advance, and then I got to be honest, Rick. So we scheduled before I went to Hartwell, and I had it in my my schedule on my phone, right? So when I book guests, I put them in the phone, and then I went and dropped my phone in the lake at Hartwell. First day of practice. Yeah. So I was trying to remember and make sure that you were on the 14th, but we scheduled it out in advance because you've been on the road pretty much for the last month at different events, functions, tournaments where they're giving away cats, all sorts of stuff. So it's been a minute since you've been in the office.
We did SEMA 2 weeks ago. I went and did SEMA. Took a young man here, Dalen Owens. We went out and did SEMA for 2 days and burned it. We do a lot, and I've been out west and, of course, won bass, and we were supposed to be at Lake X, but a little thing called Nicole blew through Florida and changed that plan. And so we didn't have that Lake X event. So we've gotten involved, and I guess probably this morning or tomorrow morning, Mercury's got a big release on a new product. So it's coming out tomorrow.
I saw that. You mentioned SEMA. So I guess that's kind of a parallel show to ICAST. I know there's several of the anglers, depending on their sponsors, that'll go to SEMA. There's always a couple bass boats there. You talk about it. But, I mean, for those who, I'm not exactly sure what SEMA is and how it works.
It's an aftermarket automotive show. And if you ever get time when you're doing nothing, you can look at my Facebook site, and I've got all kinds of albums of cars and things that I put up there. But I've been going to SEMA since before they built the Las Vegas Convention Center.
How long ago was that?
Oh, I don't know. In the 80s. We went years and years ago when they first joined with Apex, and it was all intense, and you had to go to this parking lot and that parking lot. And I mean, it was hard to get around. And we've been going to SEMA for many years. And it's an aftermarket accessory show, and it really gives us a lot of concept knowledge. And believe it or not, all of our little interior light suppliers we get out of Taiwan have come out of SEMA. And so we've found some pretty cool stuff at SEMA, things that aren't in our industry. And then you get a lot of concept thought. Now that's changing. When I went to SEMA years ago, it was all really custom cars where they might build a funnel for a stereo woofer in the back deck out of fiberglass, or they would build a gauge pod. And they were just really cool concepts. Today it's different. And it morphs just like anything does. So today it's all 4-wheel drive accessories. There's some cool cars, and you get to see a lot of $1 million rides. But, there's a Pagani there, an Enzo. There's a lot of good cars there that are really unique. But, and they're certainly mind-provoking. They'll give you a lot of thought. But really today it's a lot of trucks, too. I mean, everybody's gone to jacked up 4-wheel drives and trucks that are, your head won't come to the headlight,
But so it sounds like it's a little combination trip, something that you enjoy, your passion. But I mean, do you also literally walk around and see stuff? And it sounds like with that lighting, like you're like, hey, that's something we could incorporate into future cat models.
That's really all it is. My goal going to SEMA, and Dalen came with me, and he's 31 years old, and I was dragging him at the end of the day. The old man was dragging him. And we put in 24 miles in 2 days
Walking?
walking.
Holy cats.
So we're not taking time to look at cars.
Yeah.
And you snap a picture on your way by, that's a cool car, next booth. And they're just, I know a lot of the guys have been to like ICAST or SHOT Show in Vegas, and they built a new convention center at Vegas across from monorail where you used to park. But from the parking lot all the way across every convention center building, the new convention center building, and both floors of the Sands Convention Center are all Apex and SEMA.
So it's bigger than ICAST.
It is the largest show outside of Comdex in the USA.
Interesting.
So it's huge. And it's an awesome, awesome show. I mean, everybody said, oh, you're looking at cars. I came back with all kind of lighting ideas and tires and concepts of wheels and just amazing things you can do. Tools, every tool supplier you can think of. A lot of electric this year, tremendous amount of electrical influence.
We're going to get into that today because one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you as you build Basscat boats is it seems, specifically over the past 4 years, massive explosion in the number of inches of graphs that are on bass boats. And you've been doing this a long time, but I mean, you're seeing 6 12-inch units or 4 16-inch units. And then, he started working with Beat Down Outdoors, and there's all sorts of specialty graph.
Those are good guys.
Guys. There are graph companies and things out there now, but it led me to believe, everyone is like you see Ike, and I feel like Ike sometimes is like, let's put one in the middle of the deck. Let's put a ram mount up here it looks chaos. And then you have others who do the triple. And I was like, dude, you're designing the boats.
I started all that. I've told that story on Bass Talk Live before,
Yep.
We built Ike's first boat with a pair of 7s, I think, or a pair of 5s as secondary units. And they were on a separate switch, separate power line and everything for backup. And after that, everybody, well, if Mike's doing it, I'm going to do it. So everybody else jumped on board. So now it's pretty common to have, we build boats now with 5 graphs on them when they leave here.
So I was at the bass tank getting my graph or that mount installed, and he was installing it, and he's like, man, it's like perfect for the Cat up here. Like I run the 2021 Puma now, but there's like a little deal and it fits perfectly up there, and it led me to believe, to you, is that like the next frontier bass designs to building front decks and consoles that can accommodate all these crazy graphs?
Well, my thought, Matt, for decades now, for couple decades, has been we need to do something like a server rack. So if I had, and it's never going to happen, so I'm going to throw it out there,
Okay.
Do something like a server rack, and you slide your Garmin server plug in here, and you slide your Lowrance computer in here, and then everything plugs in, and we'll have like a wrap screen, like a flexible wrap screen that wraps the front of the boat. So you've got all 3 screens or 4 screens, whatever you want, on one panel. That's my ultimate end of all thought process.
So why don't you think this will ever come to fruition?
We're too small a niche industry. It'll take years. It'll be decades before it comes together. And then the other thing is, quite honestly, every time I've ever I almost had it through with one company. We were really close. But the graph companies all want to control the display. And then, they're really software companies, but they want to sell displays. So when you look at Humminbird, and I'm sorry for talking about Humminbird, guys, but they're really focused on the Super Twist display and trying to keep that in their little category, and that's not even their display. They buy that display. So it's not like they're building it, but all the companies, they want to sell displays. They want to sell LCDs. They want to sell complete units. And really, they're going to have to really change to the way that things are, because this little tool in my pocket, it has changed the way people think. And back about 2007, this device right here changed everything in the world. And it's time everybody caught up. And in the bass boat business, we're behind.
Not as technologically advanced as the bass boats need to be.
That's right. We're not.
Does it, so you've got I feel like now you have like the power pole charge and batteries and stuff now that you have apps for on the phone and all that stuff. So you're talking about like an app for the entire boat, or what it
I'm not even talking about an app. I'm talking about a separate system, drive system that even devices like this would depend on.
that's coming eventually.
It will eventually. It's going to have to be outside of our industry because of the cost and it's really not that much cost, but to bring it forward, when you look at the cost of technology, it's not that much cost. But to bring it forward, it's going to have to develop. And then what's going to happen is eventually somebody will build something where you can plug in. I mean, they can mimic your screen now, but they can't function your screen, So you can mimic your screen. You can show it on the front graph or show it on a front unit, but you can't function it from that unit. So what we need to do is get to where those units will function from separate screens. And eventually it'll happen where somebody figures out the code or takes the time to effort to put it together and then drops it in a box. And it'll come. It's been a 20-year goal of mine ever since we started getting into the 987 SI units when we worked with the guys at Humminbird on those. When the first SIs were out and we worked on the initial Onyx. We worked on a lot of products here. We don't just build bass boats. We kind of try to bring the industry forward. That's one of the things people don't realize. And you've been here and you've seen some of that, and you go back in the back and there were a couple of prototype products that we won't mention the name of the company, but they were here at the time and nobody'd seen them, and those are still here. And, I've had my foot on products to come, and there's still stuff coming, but still yet I feel like this train's really slow.
Just as a whole, I mean, has it always been slow, or what? I mean, was there a point in the last 50 years where you think it went fast and innovation in bass boats and what you're putting into them was light speed, or has it always just been a gradual progression in that, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's been slow. We're relegated to what's already been produced.
Okay.
So until somebody develops it, I mean, those screens, nobody builds their own screen. So they have to buy that from somebody who builds a screen. Now you can adjust it, you can change the overlay, you can change the way the twist works in it. But really that screen, we were one of the few companies in 1992, we were building the Super Dash, which was the BP 100 Dash, and we actually had our LCD screen totally made. Standish Hamlin built that for us. It was the largest LCD screen they'd ever built in 92. And we'd prototyped that in 91 and got it all dialed in. And today people just buy screens, go to Corning and buy what they built,
All right, let's go down this wormhole. What are some of the craziest concepts, the craziest things that you've seen over the years that haven't taken off? Because look at vehicles, right? Like there's crazy stuff in concept vehicles, but like bass boats, I don't ever remember seeing like concept bass boats or crazy. I mean, is there stuff that you guys have gone down paths and been like, this is the next thing, and then it isn't, and we have no clue about it?
I'll talk about a couple of things, but that there really hadn't been anything way out there. People have talked about covered cockpits, and I've thought about that. There's just no way to get around in them. You'd have to do split gull wing type doors that open outside. Then you can't get into them. Yeah, open the top to the outside. That's exactly right. You have to do this. And so you open them reverse because that's where you're at. You're in your cockpits or wintertime usage. And that'd be cool. It's nice. A lot of guys are playing with heated seats and cooled seats, but I played with, heated seats. I played with that. And, the components in them, I'm not really sure hold up to the outdoor environment. That's a nice way to put it. I think that eventually those that are running heated seats are eventually going to have a problem, and it could lead to a catastrophic failure.
Like you sit down and you're fried.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, but basically, you're not going to fry yourself with 12 volts, but you certainly could have a little bit of ignition down there inside of a foam pack. So, it's definitely a challenge, and that's been one of our goals is working on, and I really feel like cooled seats will be the next advantage. I mean, I need cooled seats more than I need heated seats in the bass boat. When I'm outside in a bass boat, I got enough gear on. Yeah, that heated seat's nice if I'm in Florida and it's 40 degrees in the morning. But most usually when I'm on the water, like right now, it's 23 here this morning. I'm gonna be wrapped up, ready to go. So the heated seat's not a big advantage to me, and heated steering wheel would be nice, but it's not a huge advantage. I mean, they got heated steering wheels and heated parts and snowmobiles with handles and things. Those are there. Heated gloves would be probably more benefit than anything, you know. But certainly, I think cooled is the way to go. So I'd really like to see us work on some cooling. We've done some things. We're really not there yet, but I'd like to see cooled because, you know, most of the time we all use these boats in the summertime. You go to Texas, and dude, after April in Texas, it gets brutal. And come October, it gets over. So you got 5 months in Texas at a cooled sea to be a really nice thing.
Yeah. Has the I guess normalization now, I mean with the advent of lithiums, has that changed a lot of technology that you think you can add? I mean, for a while there it seemed like you could max out, you know, AGMs and standard batteries, but now it's kind of limitless with lithiums, isn't it?
Yeah, lithiums gives you a big advantage, and they're coming fast. I mean, I'll send you a link later. But there's a guy that
Okay.
breaks down lithium batteries to a 10th degree on YouTube. He does a nice job breaking down the batteries and teaching people about them. And you know, you look at the BMSs, the heaters, the way the seals work. You know, we're tied to a lithium company, and the largest lithium company in the USA had gotten a hold of us wanting us to private label. They wanted to get started. Actually, the largest lithium builder in China, and they wanted us to do something with them. And so we tied them up with a friend of ours, and a friend of ours, and I'm not going to mention the name, but a friend of ours has got that pack, and they worked about 4 years on that pack, and they took it into another battery technology, and they've got a really nice piece. I mean, there's still things they need to do. They just got their cranking series in. They released it at ICAST, so lithium's coming really fast. But ultimately, there's supposed to be 10 steps of battery technology. So the air sodium being the final step, they say. So there's 10 steps in this evolution process that battery technology is going to change, according to battery guys that know. So this lithium is just like step number 3. You know, it's still going, and AGM still lead acid battery with
Hmm.
just a bin in it. I mean, it's just a different type of lead acid. So basically, it goes through lithium, it goes through all sorts of other phases, and eventually they feel like air sodium's where it'll land with a lightweight, durable battery, and then something we can deal with in our environment also.
All right, and then the other thing that seems to be the hottest thing right now is either a hybrid deck with the foam. I know you've talked about this before on the show. I've talked about it with you over the phone. I'm sure you get tired of talking about this, but you're seeing some guys that are going with all of whether it's sea foam or some other type of kind of I guess saltwater decking, for lack of a better word, or the hybrid. And it seems like there's kind of a push to get away from carpet, but then you hear some of the guys who say, no, it's been carpet for a reason because there are so many advantages to carpet. Where does that stand now as far as what we're standing on and the carpet versus the foam deal on the bass boats? Because I'm kind of confused on that too now moving forward. It's like some guys love it, some guys don't like it. It's this weird in between kind of morphing change right now in the industry.
Well, I can break that one down for you a little different. Of course, we patented that reflex design that we did, and we've got a patent pending on that. And we filed the patents on that because it's a reverse cut where you can use carpet. The reason we did that, and you know, is to tie it up, of course. But the reason we did that was because you've got aluminum lids in most of these boats now, and even if you got glass lids, you have chafing where it contacts the deck. So if you put trim around the lid, it's really hard. Our lids aren't really built to finish on the outside. Now on your craft, on our walleye series, we built an entire line over there that's finished on the outside. So we just put a trim around it. But even then, we get chafing. Now, walleye boats, they use them about 5, 6 months a year. It's not like they use them 12 months a year. And they don't tend to use them as hard usually. So they don't have near the wear. So I think that helps our walleye line go down that with SeaDek or Reflex. There's two basic kinds of foam. There's an EVA foam and a polyethylene PE foam. And we have both. I tend to like the PE a lot better. There's a couple of different companies using PE. I think it cleans a lot easier than EVA foam. We offer both. We don't offer both. We actually have both here in different products. But I do think the PE is a tremendously better product than EVA. From the standpoint of durability, I don't like it in the cockpit. A lot of guys like it in the cockpit. Last year we had our custom carpet built. Everybody started offering 24, so we moved up and had a custom 28 built. So the 24 wasn't custom; it's just something they built. But the 28 is custom, 28-ounce carpet. So we're the only ones that have it. And basically, Syntec builds that for us. It's a really good carpet, and a lot of our competition uses like a 15, 16-ounce.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's tremendously heavier than their carpet. And I kind of like the carpet. Now, we do have a foam padded deck, on just the front deck. The foam does tend to walk, so I'm kind of 50-50 on the foam decks. I kind of like them without the foam deck, especially the 28-ounce carpet. I think it helps a little bit because you get a little more cush. So going down that theory of reflex C-deck or some of the foams and the flooring, I don't like the swirling in the cockpit. So we always fish in the rain. If you're going to fish tour events, BFLs, you're going to fish in the rain. You're going to fish in the sleet. You're going to fish in the snow. You're going to fish in the worst conditions you can get. And I do not like the cockpit swirl that you get with the foam cockpits. So that water just doesn't absorb in that carpet, and it just sits in there. You run 50 mile an hour down the lake, and it's just sitting there just swirling in the cockpit. So I don't like that. And it's really hard to drain it also because there's no absorption. So you have to change your entire drain configuration to make it work right. So we're all working on that, and that's a development that takes time. But that gives you a down and out on it. No, I'm not a guy that likes the decking. But we had one in last week. We were doing some prototype work on some new dash parts. And so they spent a day. This boat was pristine when they started on it. And they were spending a day in it, going in and out, putting parts in, changing it, reprogramming stuff, working on a future product. And at the end of the day, it looked like you smeared aluminum on the floor. It was just all stained and gray. And that's just from going in and out of the boat. So I just feel like the carpet's still dirty. There's no doubt. Carpet adds weight to a boat. It adds water to a boat. And it's just dirtier, just as dirty as that C-deck is, or dirty as that reflex is. But it just doesn't show it.
Have you done the social media Barbasol on the front deck to clean the carpet trick yet? No. You think that actually, have you not seen that where the guys are putting like 3 cans of Barbasol on the front deck, then going to the car wash and they're not a believer in that one? I saw somebody
talking about the other day. They had an old center console Dynatrac for sale somewhere, and somebody said, "Oh, it's even got Barbasol on the deck where you clean his carpet." He still. I would just be
worried that my like brush hog would smell like fresh aloe or something. Then after it's been sitting on that carpet after I clean it.
Brush hog. We'll go down that road in a minute too. You've asked. We're going to go down that road.
Okay, well we'll go down that road. Let's take our first break of the show. Rick Pierce from Bass Cat Boats. When we get back, we'll go down that road. I definitely want to get your take. A lot of Bass Cats being won out on the West Coast now. I believe there was a Wild West team trail. There was a co-angler and a boater who won one. Josh Bertrand won one in the U.S. Open. You always kind of give a West Coast update, very forward, very progressive with Bass Cat reaching out to the West Coast. Get that talk, kind of go into the state of the bass boat industry, and then story time with Rick Pierce when we come back. All right, it is BTL on a Monday, November 14th. We'll be back right after this.
Your key to better fishing this season is Elite FS, now available at a new lower price. Get Elite FS 9 today for $9.99, and we'll throw in a C-Map reveal chart, our premium mapping solution, for free. Elite FS works with all state-of-the-art Lowrance sonar, from chirp, side scan, and down scan imaging with fish reveal to high-resolution active target live sonar. Elite FS9 and C-Map reveal. Offer ends August 31st.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Hey guys, Gerald Swindle representing the AFCO Hydronaut. This is the jacket I love wearing when times is tough, and I'm talking about the weather, not the fishing. The jacket, what I like, I got a double cup right here. I can seal up the bottom of my jacket because when you're fishing, you're holding your arms up. You're bad about getting water that runs downhill. Everything bends good. I'm long arm. Look, it fits very comfortable. My arms is flexible. I've got the speed hood on, pouring down rain. I can get everything zipped up. One thing they did is they made plenty of pocket space. If you ain't got enough pockets in the Hydronaut rain suit, you just got too much stuff. From the water membrane, that's 30K, baby. 30 times the reason you ain't gonna get wet. Super warm. If it's cold in the wintertime, you put on your Hydronaut, you're gonna be a much more comfortable person. If you don't just look sexy at Dairy Queen, wear your Hydronaut. We got it from small to 5X. Most rain gear does not come in that many sizes. You got waist adjusting straps. We can make it fit you. No matter what the environment is, we want you to be comfortable. We want you to be dry. You gotta check it out. It ain't gonna let you down.
The KVD 100 jerkbait. 15 different colors. A perfect combination of roll, wiggle, and flash. Increased castability. 3D eyes. Premium black nickel hooks. KVD. Tie one on. Striking lures.
We're back.
All right. We are back. That STS, is that still, I know we were talking last year, you were like inundated with orders with that thing when it came out, right?
Yeah. It's still happening.
Is that, I mean, that's a major, is that the biggest redesign you've done probably in a boat in the past, what, decade?
No, it's not the biggest redesign, but I mean, it's a big redesign. I mean, you know, we started with a new hull, new deck. It's all fresh. The hull was innovative. We started with a Jag on the STS series, and then we were just going to keep evolving it, you know, as we go through other models. I mean, this isn't going to be the last STS hull. We hope to have one to release in the summertime, you know. So It's just one of those things you just keep going and keep evolving. And that one was a big one. I mean, the Puma floor plan was pretty proven. People liked that floor plan. So that worked out very well to bring it into the STS series and tweak it some. I mean, it's tweaked quite a bit. But, I mean, it's all fresh. I mean, there wasn't anything we could start with, so it was 100% wood up, fresh deal.
Okay, this might be a dumb question, Rick, but I'm curious about this. All right, so I'm a guy, I tournament bass fish, right? Like, I'm not an engineer. I don't understand how the hull works. I know how it feels different, right? Like I knew when I get in the Lynx, it feels different than a Era, and when I get in the Puma, it feels different than the Lynx and all that. So you understand hulls. Here's my question to you. Should people, if you're looking for a new boat, should you make that decision on the top cap for the hull? How do you figure out like what hull is right for you, and why are there different hulls for multiple different bass boats? You see where I'm getting at that? To me, it's like something that I don't think a lot of people understand the importance of a different hull, and I don't. So kind of explain to me why and how you go about designing the hull of the boat and how you should pick it based on how you fish.
Well, when you change length, you change fulcrum, you change the way balance points and everything happen in the hull. So, you know, it's just, I mean, realistically, a 200 engine and a 300 engine weigh the same. So a boat running a 200 is going to have the same batteries, the same equipment, and pretty much the same weight. So now you build that boat in a 20, 21, 22, you've got to turn around and look at that. So really there's not a tremendous amount of difference from the standard engines down either way, whether you're on Yamaha, Suzuki, Mercury, as long as you're in standard mount engines. Now, I'm not talking about Verado. Verado's a different animal. AMS midsections, then you even go to the 450, the supercharged. So that's a different animal. And of course, tomorrow I think there'll be another animal out. But anyway, those are all changing games. But, you know, we can't go with a V12. V12's a little massive. I mean, it's taller than both of us. So you basically got to build the boat around the differences in weight. So that's one thing from our standpoint. Most companies that we've seen over years and I'm not going to say all, but most just take a XYZ length boat and they just chop it and make it longer or shorter and add a middle to it and really don't change a lot. They kind of just stay consistent. All of our hulls as a company are totally different. So every single hull we build has a tweak. Probably the most two common that are closest together are the Sabre and the Pantera 2. Those are the two that are really the 18 and 19s. There's not a lot of difference in them. They're pretty much the same. But when you look at the Classic, you look at the Bobcat, you look at the Era, and you mentioned the Era, and those are all totally different hulls. So it's not like we cut one and shaped it. And the bottoms are different in different ways, and the lengths are different, the depths are different in the hulls. And we just do things that we think we need to do to get them to run. Now, as a customer, what that means to you is for our line, you want to pick what you want. So if you're fishing the Great Lakes, you may pick something different, you know. I mean, the Lynx is our longest running surface by far. So it's actually got the longest flat bottom, so to speak, and comes out longer, but it's not our longest boat. So the transition is different on a Lynx than it is a Jag. It's totally different. So it's just a difference in the way we build them. It's the way we see them, trying to get them to run big water or bigger horsepower or many things. So as a customer, I think for our line, it depends on where you're going to fish at, your area. You know, are you fishing flat water? Are you fishing the Great Lakes? Are you fishing tidal water? Just kind of figuring out what fits your mode, you know. And that goes back to the same with the floor plan.
Okay, so back in the day, would your dad like straight up like mold a hull, go out in 3-footers and just let it fly and test it and see, and then come back and sand on it and lay another hull? Or, you know, like, is that how that's designed?
Well, Dad, you know, everybody goes back to Dad. Dad's last product I got out of Dad was a 1991 Pantera Classic deck. And that's the last thing I got him to build for us. The one thing Dad did do that when we built and I'm going to write, I don't know how to word it, but I'm going to write a chronology or some type of a thank you to Dave Fenton for what he did for us on the Pantera in 1988 and actually 87 year. But I owe Dave Fenton a lot. Personally, I owe Dave Fenton a lot. The company owes Dave Fenton a lot because he helped me to manage the Pantera 2 when my dad was tooling the Pantera 2 and I was tooling the Sabre. We were side up. I was working in one shop, he was working in the other, and we did it over a break. We actually built those boats in just a few weeks, the decks. I mean, it was bam, get them done. And it doesn't take he or I long to tool, so we can tool really quick. And Dave came in, spent 2 weeks with me, and basically he'd come in the morning, visit with me, and then Dad would come in, as Dad always did, at 10 or 1 o'clock, whatever time he felt like he needed to be here, work till about dark, and go home, you know. And so Dave came in and helped me to wrangle Dad. But Dad's big concept, I'll give him credit on what he thought was right. We were building the first Pantera in the 80s, early 80s. And that's probably the last hull. Well, Dad did the Felix and the Margay after that. So those are 2 hulls got done by him. Basically, those hulls, when we were working on that hull, he came up with the concept, I wanted to build it for 175, and it was his idea to build it for 200. And so we stretched it, deepened it, widened it, did what we wanted to do with what was a spin-off of Molinari hull, and turned it out and changed quite a bit, actually. I mean, in ways people wouldn't even know. And Dad wanted to run it for 200, and at the time, I was kind of 175 focused. And it was probably the best thing that could have happened because nobody was building a 200 rated boat at the time in the 19. You had to go to the 20s, and anybody's 20-footer was a sled. I don't care which brand you bought, it was a sled. And I remember when we built this plant, Dad thought we'd never build anything bigger than 18-foot when we first built this plant. And now we're building 22s, and who knows where it'll end, you know.
Do you think as far as the professional tournament scene, we're maxed out at 250 though? With I mean, you see some guys run a Jag or 22+ foot boat, but I mean, do you think 250 is where it stops? I mean, it seemed like there was a period of innovation where it went from that to you mentioned the 150s, the 2s, the 225s, and 250s, or is that kind of the top end, you think?
When we went to 250s in 95, All right. So when we did that, we
That
were
was a
having
long
trouble
time ago.
selling our own boats with 150s. We were building 72%. We were building over 80% of our product with bigger than 150 when we went. That hasn't happened yet. 250 seems to have a lot of pressure. It seems to hold. Most of the guys, you got BFLs. See, at the time, BFL was limited to 2.25. It was Redman. So most people don't realize that back in the old days of Operation Bass, even before when it was Operation Bass with Mike Whitaker, Mike, Charlie, and the guys stopped at 225. So that's kind of where the 225 came into the world at, and that's the most you could run in a Redman event. So as Redman and BFL stopped at 225, that's what drove the everyday recreational angler to go to 175, 200, 2.25. And then that became popular in the mid 90s as Mercury. We worked with Steve at Mercury, and he built the 225 EFI and took the carburetor. I'll never forget, we're down there and then we're looking at that boat, and we were down there on another project. We had a couple of boats down there at Lake X, and Steve called me into the R&D facility, and he said, so do you think customers will buy this if we turned it into a 225 EFI? It was a carbureted motor, and nobody was buying a carb. And he said, yeah, I think they'll buy it, Steve. He said, well, it's only going to get about 2 miles to the gallon, 1.5 miles. I said, at the time, buck a gallon for fuel. And I said, no, they'll buy it. And they did. And he was just scared to build it because he didn't think the consumer would ever go that way. And of course, with the horsepower ratings at tournaments, that's what drove that. So the West Coast really drove the move from 150 to 250, Matt.
Okay.
It was really the West Coast, because when Bass went west, they couldn't get participation out west because they weren't out west, and everybody out west had 200s. And so what really drove the move and the shift wasn't the fact that BFL and Redman had 2.25. It was the fact that if you were going to draw out west, you had to go to the 200 rated engines. So there was a big conversation with Scott and the guys at the time about whether, and of course Ray was pretty much out at that time, Helen and Dewey and all them, about where do we go, And so they wound up going to 250, and then of course Operation Bass shifted to 250, and it became the standard. Today we don't see the 300s at near the horsepower. I think with big boats, a good majority of the big boats we build that are 300, 250, above 250, I'll say, they're going to recreational anglers.
Yeah.
And so we sell a lot of 400Rs. We sell several 450s a year, not a lot of 450s. I mean, you just don't sell a lot of $175,000, $180,000 bass boats. It's just not common. But the guys that got them, I mean, I had one, and they are just absolutely the berries. So if you wanted the ultimate rig, that is the ultimate rig.
I've seen it. It's freakishly cool looking.
Well, it's just a wonderful. You just can't believe the ride and the performance and just the way it runs.
Yeah.
It's just really a slick ride that's capable of knocking off big numbers, but you really don't run it there. It's just you're at 75, 80 before you can blink an eye.
Yeah. Isn't Mark Davis running a Jag with a 250 this year?
Yeah,
this past year he did?
Going to Puma STS this year.
Okay.
Yeah, Paul likes both. Paul had 2 of them.
Okay. I crawled around in that thing, and it is still, I feel like you could rent out half of that thing and someone could live in it. It's cool. You mentioned it. Let's talk real quick, or not even real quick, however long. Like I said, we could go here. As soon as you have to go, you just let me know, Rick.
No, I'm good.
All right.
Listen, I'll go back down one road there. Let's go back to that horsepower thing. I don't think we closed that topic. Yeah, I think that as anglers, if BFL made a shift to 200s on just that event side, then that would open them up to more participation. I think the West Coast is accepted to 250. So I don't know that we're going to see the 300s, 350, 400s come into the bass boat world as tournament events. Most of the guys at home, take a Bass Champs. The majority of events allow you to run them.
Mm-hmm.
Everything out west, you can run what you brung as long as it's within the Coast Guard rating of the boat. Same's true in most of the Southeast events. So you look at Fishers and Men, any of those, you can, Al's group at Fishers and Men, you bring one, you can fish it, Angler's Choice. AC Tournament Structure, Rick Burns, USA Bassin, run what you brung, as long as they're within the horsepower range of the boat. So I think those suit the recreational angler quite a bit. So I think a tournament angler, I can see it going to 300, and I don't see that to be a problem, honestly.
There you go. A lot of questions on the instant feedback, Rick, and every time you're on, I know Jeffrey's used to ask this question. I don't know the ins and outs of it, so I'll just ask it, and I'll let you roll with it there, but I know it has been a crazy almost 3 years now, especially since COVID-19. You have 19, 20, 21, and 22 with bass boats, with availability, with building them, with buying new ones, selling used ones. It's been chaos, and a lot of people are talking at it. So the floor is yours to talk about what I guess I would consider the current state of the bass boat industry as of November 14th, 2022.
We're sold out for 2023.
Really?
Literally, anybody that gets a boat on order right now, the dealer's going to have to take one off of their order system to put you on it. And so technically, we really need like 30 boats to close, 20 boats to close 23. If you look at the numbers, we're really oversold, but there's some stock units that could rotate out. Our inventory is about, in the field, is about 30% of what it needs to be. So we're not doing really, we can't take care of the product in the field because we can't catch up. I looked at, every Monday I get a report. This morning's orders were very strong. This is what's been ordered in the last 7 days. So they were very strong. And that's sold unit retail. So that means somebody's got as a dealer, you have to take one off that you're expecting and put this one on and to get mad a new boat, So we've got a big challenge as a company. There's still a challenge of screens and chips. There's still a component challenge with supply chain. It's improved tremendously, but we dumped 6.4 trillion into the market of USA funds, and the Fed's pulled back about $1.5 trillion. And then they've got, so they pulled back most of the last stimulus. And so it's really still, there's a lot of money in the market. The people who have money, the haves have, and the have-nots have not. And there's no way you can not expect inflation to go up when you've got people paying McDonald's workers $15, $20 an hour. When the guy serving you a cup of coffee is getting $15-$20 an hour just to try to get him in a $1,000 signing bonus, it's kind of hard to not see inflation. So we passed the $80,000 mark, and I knew we were in the 80s, but we passed to 100,000 on the top end bass boat overnight. I didn't think we would pass that fast. I always felt like we'd be there. You and I have had that conversation before that after 25 grand, a boat's a boat and people will buy what they want to buy. But they went to 100 faster than I ever thought, Matt. So we're still backed up. We still have challenges. We still have motor shortages. Mercury is not online with the second line yet, so they've got a new production line coming on. So certainly that's a challenge. Yamaha still doesn't have inventory. Suzuki can only build so much product, and the demand is higher than the supply.
It's a double-edged sword then.
Yeah, there's just no way to catch up on it.
So how does it eventually catch up?
Well, hopefully Mercury gets that product line up this month. They get to build more motors, but even then it's challenging because we get propellers that aren't exactly right because a new guy built them or they're running them through. If you increase production 17%, you just built more product because you didn't build them on a new line to do it. So you wind up just pushing harder, and so we wind up with the challenges of that.
I wish I knew a good follow-up question, but business-wise, like I said, I'm missing the big man this morning, Rick, as far as that's concerned. I guess it seems, I talk with a lot of my buddies, and a lot of them are trying to sell their boats, order new ones. And it seemed like a couple years ago, like I had my old ZX 190 that had been in store. My plan was to do what Rojas did with his and be like, hey, I'm keeping my first boat. But then Bassmaster opens, not cashing checks. I'm like, hey, I'm paying to keep this thing here. So I put it up a couple years. Dude, it was like it was made out of pure gold brick. And then, ironically, I sell it. 2 days later, some dude tries to resell it for twice what he bought it for me from. And I'm like, this used boat market is nuts. Like, I had buddies going, isn't this your boat? Like your old ZX, from back. And I'm like, yeah. But now also then I've got a couple buddies with boats that are for sale now. And they're like, holy cow, like the used boat market went from crazy. And now it seems like there's a bunch of used boats for sale that are tough. Like that's a totally different market right now that's totally in flux as well.
Yeah, now the used boat market, and I think our competition is still, we know some of our competition is catching up because there's inventory in the field, and a couple of them didn't have any demand. So when they started in their business structures, they didn't have demand. So if you didn't have demand, then you can automatically put inventory on fields. But we can't. We're not in that position. We have a lot of demand, a lot of consumer demand, and it's tough. But the used boat market, it's our first one, not the first time, but one of the few times, very, very few times I've seen NADA raise Blue Book. So they actually came in and raised the value of your boat.
That's good news.
Yeah. So basically they adjusted Blue Book to today's market. And so that's what's happened to used boats. They were going at much higher clip than they were. And so now it's kind of calming on the used boat side. It is a little softer, no doubt. Takes a few days to sell one now. Before you put it on the market, you better be ready to get your stuff out of it.
Yeah. You mentioned it. I want to make sure we don't skip over this. You mentioned the West Coast. That was a cool little deal about the motor size kind of driving, or the West Coast driving the increase in motor size. Very active there with a cat to the winner of the U.S. Open. Josh Bertrand just had 2 this past weekend. I believe that was a Wild West championship out there. Talk about kind of your thoughts on the West Coast, and I feel like there's a couple really cool things that are going on out there that a lot of the country is taking kind of more notice of because of how hard they're pushing out there, and a core group of anglers that are really kind of dedicated to that West Coast tournament scene and making it work. Yeah,
of course, we've started Apex on the West Coast, and Jeremy, we actually had first call out there on a couple of things, and one of our major competitors vacated the West Coast, and we decided to pick up a couple of events out there. And then a third event came to us that we really weren't planning on, and we support Randy Pringle's Best Bass tournaments out there, BBTs, and we support ABA, American Bass Association, which is one of the older organizations in the country. They started in 82 or 83, so it's 40 years old, and Craig. And we support them, and that came to us just kind of out of chance, but it's a really good grassroots organization. We started our West Coast swing with the U.S. Open and Billy Egan and Brad, and at the time, all of Lori's group out there at One Bass, One Western Outdoor News. And, of course, the U.S. Open is the West Coast event. It's the noted West Coast event. Y'all used to cover it. I think you're still going to cover it once we get through this COVID thing, and Mark would go out there, and it's really the event out west. And then we picked up WWBT, and when we picked it up with Jeremy and Randy in 2019, we had conversations in 18, and we went ahead and did it in 19 and started in 20. So it's fresh with us. We've got a couple of years behind us now, and one of the things we put in our contract was Apex Tour for Jeremy to start a world-class type West Coast event, because these guys just fished at Guntersville, and Mark and Ty and all the guys, all the guys load up down south of California, and they got to drive all the way to Guntersville to fish Toyota Championship. I'm like, golly. So our goal is to give them a West Coast Championship through the Western Bass Shootout, and that event will happen this year. We're still having conversations with the Expo Center. Those, like I told them at the One Bass U.S. Open, if we have to hold this thing in a rodeo arena, we're going to hold it. So we're going to get the Western Bass Shootout off the ground. That's what we've got to do to give those guys an option out west of something to fish. When we started that, our initial goal, Matt, was to grow fishing on the West Coast, freshwater fishing. And at the time, anytime in my lifetime, it's been about 7.5% of the market. You know the number. So right now it's up a few digits. We're feeling really good. We're under 10, but we're up. And the last 5 years, we've seen growth out there that we've never seen in my lifetime as far as percentage of the market. And our goal, we feel like, is to have about 14% of the U.S. market out west.
Very nice. Story time. I mentioned a brush hog or something that brought up something that you wanted to get into.
Yeah, that was eventually, that's an old Ed Chambers story, and Ed and I were friends. And Ed would provide me baits back when I fished when I was your age or younger. And so I called Ed one day, and I needed some lizards and some grubs. And he said, Rick, I'm going to throw this in the box. He said, I got this mold by accident. He said, boy didn't pay me, so I just kept the mold. I designed it for him, and he said he was going to build this, and he was going to sell this, and I was going to build it, and I didn't get paid. So he threw in about half a dozen sprues. I mean, you get all the baits, and there are 25 baits on a sprue, or 20 baits on a sprue, and all the baits are connected. They mold them, and he just threw them in the box. Yeah. And it was the original brush hog.
Really?
And I took that thing to the top 100 at St. John's, and I was fishing top 100 then, and I took it to St. John's, and I was smacking them on it, believe it or not. We caught them during spawn. I was fishing around. Kevin was on one side of me about 150 yards away. I was starting over by the dam, and I was fishing it in the back of Rodman Pool. Of course, most of us were in Rodman that year. Chet Dowdett was probably 50 yards away from me. Chester's a great guy. And I was whacking them on the bait, and didn't work out for me. But when we came through the lock, everybody hid their baits, and there wasn't any hiding that bait. I wasn't worried about it. Nobody else had one. And Mickey Bruce looked over and saw it and said, what is that? And Tom Mann Jr. was in there, and Tom, where'd you get that at? Oh, Ed sent it to me. Well, I'm going to have to call him. I've never seen that. And pretty soon everybody had a brush hog.
So that would have been what, like 90, 91? I'm looking 91?
91, St. John.
Golly, so the brush hog has been around for 91, 2001.
Actually, it wasn't a brush hog
years.
At the time. He hadn't named it yet. He had just pulled the mold, and he thought, I think I'm going to call it roadkill.
That's what he was going to call it originally.
Yeah.
The bait.
And then eventually he built roadkill. And he had another bait he built called a roadkill.
I've never heard of that. He
brought the brush hog out after the roadkill.
I've never heard of that. Oh, it's like a
it's another bait, another
crawfish. Looks more crawfishy.
Mm-hmm. But Ed said, I think I'm gonna call it roadkill.
Huh. Now roadkill's I think Reaction Innovations has a color called roadkill now.
They may, yeah.
Huh. I kind of went off the rails. I had Jody White from MLF on it, and before the show, I started crunching numbers, and I got really jacked up because between Larry Nixon, who's using a Legends exemption to go back to the Bassmaster Elite Series this year, and Rick Clunn, 95 years of professional tournament experience between the two, Rick. Do you have any Larry Nixon stories?
Well, that's a day we came out of the lock that morning at St. John's, and that was the year that Larry and Tommy were running nitros with Evinrude's. And so that was the year Bass Pro had an Evinrude agreement, and they had built those hopped up Evinrudes, and Larry had one that would just flat fly. And I had got tired of getting protested because they protested me many times about my engine, claiming it was a 200.
Really?
Oh yeah, I've had my cowling pulled more than once, many more than once. So bad that Roy Ridgel wouldn't even open the cowling on them. Say no, tell them something. He was pretty vague. I mean, pretty clear about what he'd say, but Roy knew it was a 150. So I got tired of messing with them. That year we went to the top 100s. I think that might have been our first event at St. John's, and we started down there. Dad flew down. Roy, of course, lived there right at Palatka. That was home to him. And so Dad came down. He was going to play golf with Roy. I was fishing top 100s. We took off that morning out of the launch, and I was back in the back of the pack, and there were 56 boats in the lock that morning going into Rodman. And so when we took out Rodman, it was quite a melee going out. And we had Walt Reynolds and Robbie Bickley and Tommy Biffle and me, 4 of us on the right side of the canal going up. And I couldn't get by. Robbie couldn't get by Walt. Biffle couldn't get by Robbie, and I couldn't get by Biffle. Of course, we're just kind of stair-step back the field off the right side of Walt. So I told my partner I had a music major out of Boston with me. He was not really a tournament guy. I said, hang on, we're going to cut the lily pads. So I cut the lily pads to right, and I had got tired of them protesting me, so I built a little 17-foot caracal. And Dan Shadd was at Mercury at the time, and I said, Dan, the first 150 that comes off the line at 165 horsepower, I'd like to have it. And I got a 150 engine that had the dyno sheeting on the side of the box, and they'd taken one of those big Sharpie markers with a wide blade on it, and they had wrote "Hold for Rick Pierce" on the box when I got it. So it was a pretty cool deal. So Mercury actually held that engine for me, and that was truly a 165, which is 10% over as most you could make it. And so at the time, I was going in and out of Mercury quite a bit with R&D and things we were doing. And Dan did that for me, and the guys held it for me, and I got that. And I built my boat, hand-built, where it would run. And we went out of that lock, and pretty soon I shut the pad field and got by Tommy and Robbie, and they were side up because they were working by Walt, and Walt was never in a hurry.
He was a cruiser.
He was a cruiser, right? So there were a whole bunch of us, and we got by the rest of the pack, and I got by Tommy, and then I got by up beside Tommy, and Tommy couldn't believe I was off to his right side, and he was probably 50 yards in front of the field.
Oh, he probably did not like that. I feel like Tommy does not enjoy getting passed.
Tommy's a good friend. I've known Tommy since the mid-70s, or early 70s, actually, 374 when he started fishing for us. Yeah. Tommy's a good guy. And then I got by Tommy, and then Larry was about 100 yards or better out past Tommy. He was way out in front, just cruising. And I came by Larry like he was tied to a tree. And there's a cut as you go into the Rodman pool. And there's a cut where there's a boat ramp to the left. And I took that cut behind the island. And when Larry Nixon came out, there was a fog hanging just off the water, and there wasn't a ripple. And I took that cut and turned to the left, and I went to the dam. When Larry came out of the canal, I was standing on my front deck. That's how much I was in front of him. I was standing on my front deck at the dam at Rodman. And I saw him come out, and then he came about 2 hours later. He was fishing a point across from me, and I said something to Larry, and he was fishing a worm the way Larry did at the time. I don't know if he still does, but it was, it was like you're cranking a worm almost, and he's fast. And so Larry said, good running boat, Rick. I asked if he got any fish. He said they had one or two. I don't remember. And I hadn't had any yet. I'd lost a good one. And he had said, nice running boat, Rick. And when he got in, Dad came up to me, and that afternoon, Chester told him I was fishing too fast. And I was all around fishing, didn't catch him. And Kevin had a limit. Chester had a limit. And I was fishing too fast. I was jacked up, young. First to break out of the box on the top 100s. But a lot of adrenaline in your throat. You know how it is.
Yeah.
But Dad came up to me and said, so I heard you fishing too fast. I said, yeah, Chester told me. He said you was all over them, just didn't catch them. I said, no, I had a nice little bunch, but not much. And so then he said, I heard the boat run pretty good too. I said, where'd you hear that at? He said, well, Larry come up to me and said he didn't know where you went, but when he came out of the canal, he couldn't even see a wake.
You're gone.
I was gone. That was my Larry Nixon story. But I always wanted to draw out Larry. I think Larry's probably one of the 3 most intuitive anglers in the sport. And that would be, yeah, I really do. I think he, Rick Clunn, and Dave Glebe.
Really? I had Rick. I was going to try to write him down before you said it, but what makes you put Glebe in that list?
He was intuitive in his young age, very intuitive. He'd make a decision to run to one end of the lake. So he would be fishing at the dam and run up the river. And out west, what people don't realize is I don't know how many products Dave Glebe won out west. And actually, one of the people that looks up to Dave Glebe in that regard was Rick Clunn. And Rick always said Dave Glebe is one of the most intuitive anglers, and I do also. And so Dave's a good guy working at a Bass Pro Shop in Manteca right now.
Really?
Yeah. Pushing his age a little bit, but always been one of the most intuitive anglers. And I think Larry and Rick and Dave Glebe are probably three most intuitive anglers I ever knew in the sport. And that includes today. That includes Kevin. Now, I'm going to tell you this, Matt, and I told Don Barone this, and he didn't know it, but I actually have a spreadsheet I kept years ago on Rick Clunn and Kevin Van Dam side up. And I mean, Rick started at an older age and Kevin started at 18, but I would keep their records. And I actually have a spreadsheet that I quit keeping because basically Kevin outpaced Rick. But I mean, Kevin's no doubt the best angler ever in the sport. But Rick Clunn was at a time period people thought Kevin was. And Rick was the best angler in the sport. But, I mean, when you look at the records and what they've done, just strictly based on records, Rick was really, really one of the best and still is, of course.
Yeah.
But Kevin definitely outpaced him on his actual finishes. So it'd been nice if they'd have both kind of stayed in Bass and see where it finished out, but they didn't. So now they're spun off. And
I'm very intrigued to see how history will look back on the past 5 years, especially now they're going back to 5 fish. It's just going to be hard to put comparisons, and we like to compare. Like, I mean, I do a show, I talk about comparisons, and you talk about statistics, and it'll be interesting to see this time period and moving forward for the next 5 years of how we gauge it. And isn't it if it's important to gauge it or not? I mean, dude, Kevin's what, like early 50s right now? He still has another like 22, 23 years to catch up to what Rick's done every single year. Like, I average it out for Larry Nixon. Larry Nixon has averaged 10.4 tournaments a year since like 1974. Like, that's a tournament a month. That's like 7 days. That's up north, down south. That's all over the country. It's freaking amazing.
Pre-practice in the fact that Larry guided for a living many years out at Toledo. You put down the time they spent in practice at events, and all of a sudden, you know, gosh, I look at it, and you take a lake like Sam Rayburn. You know, Matt, I've spent more than a half year on Sam Rayburn alone myself. I mean, how much do you think you know about Sam Rayburn? The average local guy doesn't spend that kind of time on there, even though he thinks he does, you know?
Yeah, it's
and so
fascinating.
you look at the way that how many times do you think Kevin Van Dam's been on Guntersville? How many times do you think Larry Nixon's been on Guntersville? How much do you think they know about that lake? I mean, really, you take that, there's a tremendous amount of tribal knowledge. Now, there's going to be some stuff they look back in history, and how do we look at what's happened with live scope, and it's going to change, but the guys still have to find out where the fish are.
Yeah.
Now, it's a lot easier and a lot different than it used to be, but these guys didn't have that. They had a flasher.
And there was some guy with a paper graph and window weights that was bitching about a flasher.
Yeah.
Right. Here's something that I, like I said, I started this, I interned for Mark in 2007. So, like, by no means have I been in this thing for a long time, but it has occurred to me over the last couple of years, regardless of what happens the rest of my life, like, this is a career for me, right? Like, I've made my living out of this as a stage, and I'd want to. I'm like, dude, I plan on doing BTL for the next 30 or 40 years. But one of the cool things that I get the advantage to do is I get to interview people who have made it their career, have longevity in it, and it still is a passion to them, and they haven't lost the enthusiasm and the excitement. And I don't think there's many people in life that get to be around people who have made their life works their passion, and they're still just as passionate about it. Like Larry Nixon, Rick Clunn, you 100% fall into that category. I mean, it's would imagine there's a lot of people who have done it, and I mean, they're ready to do it and be done and retire, go golf and play bridge or do whatever it is. But to be around people who are innovators at the start of this thing and still have just as much passion for it 30, 40, 50 years later, I think is a gift that not many people get to experience. And it's really cool to get to interact, talk on the phone, be a part of that. Like I said, I talked with Bernie about the Ray Scott Celebration of Life. You were the one who called me after that to encourage me to watch it as soon as it came out. But from my standpoint, that's a real cool aspect of my job, and what I get to do on a daily is to talk to guys like you who still seem to be just as passionate as you were when you came into this game.
Well, Ray was my dad and Ray were oil and water, because Dad was responsible back years ago with Roger Moore and another group, and that actually happened on the St. Johns River with instituting what became Ooze-Offs. And the incident that caused that happened on the St. Johns River, and Basil could tell you that story. There's a few more that could tell you that story. Tommy probably tell you that story. But basically, Roger Moore was involved in an instance with my dad, and that was in 1973 that caused the Ooze-Offs, 74, on the St. Johns River, and a BASS event, because they used to take off with a flare. Ray'd get outside with a couple of press guys in the boat, and they'd shoot the flare off, and everybody be running behind them, and there they go, Well, at this particular incident, there was and I'm going to tell a story, and Ray's not here. So there was this particular incident. They had a corner going into the St. Johns River. We all know the corner going to the right, and Ray's out front, shoots a flare off. Everybody takes off, and a particular Hydrosport and my dad were cornered up with Roger, and Dad washed him off pad and went to the inside and washed him off pad. And at that time, that boat spun out. Well, in the middle of all that was Ray Scott, and I guess he caught the rooster tails. And so that's when he got in that afternoon. When Dad got in, Ray told him, he was mad. Said there'll be no rooster tails within 2 miles of this marina. And apparently they got in the middle of that water spout, and Ray and the press boat got wet. And so that started what became Ooze-Offs. And we went to Beaver, and Tommy Martin won that event at Beaver, so it would have been 74. And so Tommy won that event. And Lanny Werner was on our team at the time. And we had a local artist. Dad had a local artist paint a charcoal drawing on a canvas. And his name was Jan Gosnell. Jan is a noted artist in Arkansas now, noted nationally. Charcoal drawing by Jan. He did newspaper art at the time, a lot of cartoons. Great guy. But anyway, Jan Gosnell did this charcoal drawing for Dad, and it was, and I'm going to tell the story. It was on a canvas. It'll never be told again, probably. And I've looked for this, and Jimmy Clance can't find the piece because Ray kept everything. I'm sure he threw this one away. And it was big. I mean, this thing was probably 3 foot across, 24-inch tall. And they had taken a bed sheet, and they had at the awards banquet the night after the event, Ray had called Lanny up to get this award. And Lanny came up carrying this bed sheet with a print under it, with the charcoal drawing under it on white canvas. And Lanny said, well, Mr. Scott, before we get I get my award, the Bass Cat Fishing Team has got a little award for you. And of course, he's in front of everybody. And Ray hasn't looked at this canvas. I'm there. I'm a kid, 74. I'm a teenager. And I got to do a lot of things as a teenager. It was cool to be a part of the sport. But they unveil this thing, and everybody in the crowd sees it. And it's Ray Scott walking on water with one leg up in the air like he's running and holding a flare gun up with water dripping off of his hat and his cowboy hat. And it's a fast cat and a hydrospook. And it's got, like in Batman terms, boom, or current or something, and the lightning's coming down, and there's off pad, and the rooster tail's getting Ray Scott, and it's a hydrospook and a fast cat, and on Ray Scott it says "Pay Scott" right here.
Yeah.
And he doesn't see it. Of course, he's got to go along with it, and the whole crowd in there in the convention center, in the little convention center banquet hall, is just laughing up the storm, and I'll never forget the look on his face when he looked at it.
That would be awesome to have that somehow.
I've asked Jimmy to find it. I'd love to have it. I would buy it back if Jimmy ever found it, but I'm sure,
Yeah.
knowing Ray, I'm sure that one is not archived. He archived everything, but knowing that one, that one probably isn't with us anymore. But Jan lives in Northwest Arkansas, I think, still, and he was the artist that did it, and that was really a cool deal. Of course, Tommy won that getting in Cedar Creek on a crankbait.
Do you remember who won and what they won, and a story from every single one of the derbies you fished? 'Cause, I mean, you fished really seriously up until, what, 2018? Like 5 years ago.
Well, I didn't fish seriously till about 95. I kind of quit as the kids got together, and 94, I kind of backed out and did one once in a while. I think I fished 99 or 100, 98 Bassmaster events. Never won any money. Of course, they didn't pay a lot of money back then, but I think I won.
They still don't, Rick. They still don't.
Huh?
They
Well,
still
they pay
don't.
a lot more. Didn't pay then, but anyway. But I think I won. I've got a row of trophies here, a row of plaques I'm really proud of. They're hanging on the wall. Then, you got a plaque all the way down years ago. Had about 2 chances to win. Okeechobee. I drew a gentleman that I won't mention his name, but he wouldn't let me go to my fish first day. And I finished 19th at that, having 1 pound the first day at Okeechobee. And
Was it Roland?
Roland won that one.
Oh, you didn't draw Roland?
No, I drew
Oh,
another
okay.
gentleman.
Okay.
Yeah, Roland won that one on fish that Scott had found in the canal. Yeah, I remember.
That'd have been a
both
young
of them.
Scott.
Huh?
That'd have been a young Scott Martin then.
That would have been a young Scott Martin. And the chance I had, a couple of chances. I had a chance at Texoma. I had a guy really help me at Texoma. Second day, I drew another gentleman that's noted in the sport, and everybody know him. That's retired now. And both of these people I drew at this time, they were hard guys. They were going to on fish, and he realized the second day when I drew the second day, I was in second place the first day at Texoma. George Cochran won that one in back of little glasses. But I had a chance to win that one, and I drew a gentleman the second day. And the last day, I drew Alan Head, and I had fallen from like second to sixth. And I drew Alan Head the last day. I should have been leading it the second day. I jerked a 4-pounder over the trolling motor 5-pounder, and the guy was looking over my shoulder. And when I hit him pulling it in, and it hit the trolling motor and fell in the water. And I mean, when I pulled back, he was looking over my shoulder. And I'll never forget that. Those are the ones you never forget, And then the last day, I was so jacked up, and Alan knows this. I was on the fish to win. I just didn't put it together. So those are my 2 chances to win in the BASS. You never forget them.
Yeah.
The best finish I had was South Carolina at Santee, and Kevin Worth and I had worked it out where he was going to fish the ditches, and I had found that ditch that Kevin was in, but my fish were better, and I was going to fish canal. What I didn't count on was the kind of company I was going to have in that canal. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. I was fishing that stick bait in that canal faster than you can imagine, and there's video of it. Of course, Lynn Dollar's got all those videos on Bassmaster, but Gerald, when he pulled in to watch me, Crawford, I looked over and Gerald's mouth's open and he's holding the camera in his lap. And I said, "Gerald, you okay?" He said, "Are you fishing that bait that fast all day?" I said, "All day long, Gerald." And I was fishing it tremendously fast in that current. Tremendously fast.
Stick bait? Jerk bait, okay.
Yeah, tremendously fast. And, of course, I was inside of everybody because I was fishing the canal. It's just that nobody else is going to fish that bait that fast. And so, I fished it all day that way. I drew Tim Wilson from Indiana. I drew Mike from lives in Benton, Kentucky now, that used to fish. I can't remember who my third draw was that year. That was the invitationals. And about the last day, I had a big fish hole. I'd caught a 4-pounder on it, I think. And I had a big fish hole, and I watched a friend of mine pull over on that big fish hole, and I just melted because I hadn't fished it. And he saw me, and it was away from me, and nobody would have known it was one of my spots, But I watched him stop over there and catch 1 7.5 on that big fish hole, and just melt. If you'd have got there, you'd have caught that.
So you do remember every fish for all 93 tournaments?
Remember the one
That's
that cost me
good
at Megabucks? I remember most of them.
All right. Rick, I got to let you get back to taking care of business, but I did want to end with, I do have a couple things that I wanted to bring up that over the last couple years I've heard either other Bass Cat guys or people say, I just want to make sure because of all the little things that you add to all of the boats. So I got three things that I've noticed, and I've actually told some of my co-anglers this when they point it out, and I don't know if it's true or not. So you can either verify or debunk the theory of it. So the first one is that you're famous for your cup holders, and the first one is regardless of anywhere you are in a Bass Cat, you want to be able to have your tumbler in reach regardless of where you are, and that is why there's anywhere from 9 to 13 cup holders in every model of Bass Cat. Is that strictly the reason for that?
Number one decision on a woman on a new car.
Cup holders.
Cup holders.
Okay.
So that's one I pulled out of the auto industry. That's the biggest factor when a woman looks at an SUV or a car is the cup holders.
Okay. Well, for that. So the next one is the triangular shaped live well lids that you don't want a bass to jump out of the live well with that triangular shaped live well lid. You're able to open it up. You're able to box that in. So there's no way that a fish can jump over the side out of the live well while you're boxing your fish.
That's a bigger conversation. There's a lot to that. It's ammonia content because we restrict all the ammonia to the bottom. Ammonia is what needs to be recirculated and taken out of the water so your fish live, so you can keep your oxygen above the 4 parts per million in your live well, keep your pH good. So there's a lot to that. It also gives us a 20-some inch long side, so the fish has a length to get a big fish in. If you'll notice, a big fish doesn't squeeze in there. And they are really, really big. We actually took 2 live wells we have right here. The guys took them out of storage the other day. I said, clean them up. We'll need them again. And they go to the Classic and go to shows with us. So you can actually see how big that live well is. Because when you look at that live well, you realize it. And a lot of guys advertise 50-gallon live wells. You've heard that your whole life, Matt. There are no 50-gallon live wells. They're smaller than people realize. And if you think they're 50-gallon, when you picture a 55-gallon drum sitting on your back deck,
it's huge.
Do you really think your live wells are 55 gallons, you know?
No, it's mass. Yeah, no, that's crazy.
I
never even thought of it like that.
55-gallon drum on your back deck, that's picturing what you think's under your deck, and there's no way your live wells are as big as you think they are. And one of the most popular boats in the market, the live wells are 12.5, 13.5 gallons per side. And so,
Okay.
you know, if you actually measure the content of the water, they're not as big. And, you know, you go back to certain events and they get about 2 pounds a gallon in fish content. So if you displace fish, you're losing water too. So the depth of the water, the turn of the ammonia, the oxygen content, and we do check that. We worked with the Arkansas Game and Fish years and years ago. You can get an oxygen meter today for $500 to $1,000. It does a good job, but you couldn't years ago. So we've actually tested that. It actually had to do with the reason we use 1/8-inch holes on our spray bar years ago. We've opened that up to 3/16 now. And the real reason we opened it up to 3/16, when we were all kids, we didn't fish a shad spawn. Most people didn't even know what a shad spawn was unless you were on the water a lot. So it really wasn't common, but the shad spawn really changed us to move the spray bar holes to 3/16 of an inch because the shad scales would stop up the.
I just figured that out. I was like, where is he going with this?
So the shad scales would stop it up. And if you look, that's why you've got a screen in the back of your live wells now. So now we're the only ones who got a screen on all of our live well intakes.
Okay.
So there's
that's way more complex than just fish jumping out.
We take that to a science. It's a big thing. And, you know, one of the studies done out of Texas will tell you that our live wells hold fish better than most any. And there's been several studies done. Everybody wants to take credit for what they're doing with live wells. We've done that for decades, and there's a lot to it.
I like it. All right. The next one is there's a couple different types of latches on a lot of the Bass Cats, and the latches that go to compartments that are meant to keep things cold or temperature regulated, such as the cooler or the live well lids, are latches that do not have any metal that goes into the compartment, and that is to keep the heat from the metal on the top transferring down into the compartment. Is there any truth to that, Rick?
Absolutely, 100%.
Nice.
We save 7 degrees in live well temperature.
Really?
Yeah, because
With the latch instead of the latch that goes down into with the metal part in the bottom.
The Southco. The Southco part. Now we've done a lot of latch work. We've got the marine towns that we worked with. Orrin was the guy's name at Marine Town, and Orrin, we worked with him on redesign, and he built the original Southco latch. Orrin did. Orrin's gone; he's not with us anymore. But we worked with Orrin on the original latch. Southco, he built the Southco latch. And then he went over to Marine Town after the Southco and started Marine Town. And we worked with Orrin on the Marine Town latch. We actually had to buy 5,000 or so of those latches to get them built on that draw latch that you're talking about. And that 2-spring stainless draw latch is a Sierra Pacific latch that we had to commit to 5,000 of to get it built. And then, you use a couple of boats, so it's not a major buy, But now they sell them in their catalog on the market. You can buy them all day long. It's 2-spring stainless steel, really high tensile. You've used them. You know how hard they are to pull. Mm-hmm. They will not pop open. And it's a really nice latch, but real temperature, the temperature is the reason. And then we went one step further with that and moved it to consistency so that all of the cockpit latches basically are that style. So maybe a lid on a Caracal's that way or something like that. And then, of course, this year we've created the lift latches. Last year in 2021, we worked on that lift latch assembly system. We buy that now. Those parts come from now 6 different vendors to build that system. And so we're buying those. And it's still a working process. I've got a part on my desk that we're working on right now, but it's actually just reinforcing a rod and needs stiffened. So I've got a rod stiffener. I've got the rod right here that actuates them. And so we got a rod stiffener that we're working on to stiffen that assembly so that we can keep that tension on those rods right. But that lift latch is really cool. So we're doing a lot of latch work. I think it's important. The new lift latch keeps all of the action outside of the boxes, so we reduce water leakage. And it's really hard on a boat because it's not like your car door. It's not a press molded 2-part assembly that's rigid. So boats are a real challenge to keep water out of anything.
That's all I got, Rick. You got anything else?
Man, I've made myself some notes.
Well, okay, yeah. We could go another. Like I said, I'll keep you as long as you want. I don't want to keep you.
I'm good. I've blocked this time out.
All right, let's have at it then.
Yeah, Marty Stone's story.
Okay, yeah. You listen to that BTL.
Marty Stone is leading angler of the year going into Table Rock, right? Bassmaster top 150s, top 100s, whatever they are.
Yeah. Dave
Wallach's got the sponsorship boats. He's made the cut. He's up at Eagle Rock area fishing.
What lake are we on?
On Table Rock.
On Table Rock.
Last event of the year. Aaron Martin catches, a 9-1 at Table Rock and wins Angler of the Year?
I know he caught a big one. Was that his first Angler of the Year?
The first Angler of the Year.
Yeah.
Marty Stone's leading Angler of the Year. Dave Wallach is fishing the Bassmaster supplied Marshall boats.
Yeah.
They brought boats to each event, and those guys are running them. Dave Wallach had 3 boats that day.
What?
Motor Trope 3. And he's all the way up to Eagle Rock. So here's the rest of the story, the part you don't get to hear, right? I'm sorry, Tripp, for telling this story. Tripp, don't shoot me.
He's retired. He's out there fishing. He won't hear
I think a lot of bass, and you know that. Yep. I think bass is the deal. MLF's the deal also, but I like bass. We're an original sponsor, MLF, but this goes down to Bass Road, so guys don't get mad at me. Dave Wallach, they have to take him 2 boats that day. Trolling motor doesn't work on either one. So he's up there with trolling motor troubles when he drops it in the water. So basically, Dave Wallach is handicapped at Eagle Rock. He barely is 11th guy, I think, that day to miss the final cut. Aaron Martins then makes the cut, which gives him the last day to catch a 9-1 on Table Rock. So if Dave Wallach has a boat that's functional all day, does Aaron Martins make the cut? No, because probably Dave Wallach does. And Aaron Martins has no chance to catch a 9-1, and Marty Stone's Angler of the Year.
Oh, and that changes all sorts of stuff then.
That's right. A lot of changes. A lot of things happen in bass fishing people don't hear on the outside. I'll tell you, I remember one day one of our guys was fishing, and I called him before he made the cut, and it was Robert Lee. And he made the cut, and I called Robert. I said, Robert, tonight, make sure your trolling motor and depth finders work. And he did make sure they worked, and they didn't. So that night, he got to fix his product so he could be ready to go the next day. These Marshall boats were not the best.
I remember. So that was back at the very beginning where they had the Dirty Dozen, and they would tow the boats to it. And once you made the final day, you would have to fish out of that. They had, especially at the beginning, the Purelator, Sitco, all the different boats, but they had the same electronics. They were all wrapped.
Ruck's first wrap scenario. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the deal: you could run. It was pretty much Lowrance or Humminbird back then. So if you ran a Lowrance and the boat you got in had a Humminbird or vice versa, then you would have guys. I remember this from the first year of the Elite Series that I covered because they were still doing it in 2007. That would be in the morning furiously trying to put waypoints from their graph into the new graph, and then the mapping was different on them. They'd have different trolling motors. The boats would definitely have issues, so you would have these guys that sponsored it, and then all of a sudden they were thrown. I mean, and it was like that night of the tournament after they made the cut, and then they take off the next morning. And that was one of the big deals that like the anglers really, really pushed for, was to be able to fish that final day out of their boat also. Because I mean, also then for like a boat manufacturer like you, now you've got guys that are Bass Cat guys fishing out of a Triton on the final day with the jerseys and stuff. It made no sense to anybody, I don't think. I understand why they did it.
Guys fishing their own product, even if we sponsored events, And I mean, it's like looking out west. We're about growing the west. We're not about growing Bass Cat. If we grow the west, we'll grow Bass Cat.
Yeah.
And we need to have more open atmosphere like that. So when you look at this, the lockout was not a good thing when you locked them into the sponsor product. And like I said, I called Robert, and I did the same thing. I think Tucker made a cut that year, and I called Tucker, and I said, guys, make sure they work in the morning, but tonight, not in the morning. And so it was there was a lot of things that I think they could have done. But you talk about that, and we talk about MLF changing formats or the new team events or anything. There's always going to be some form of change in this sport.
Yeah, I don't mind the change, I think, as much as some of the message board people or some of the fans, because if you look back at the history of it, the format has always changed, and there's always been tweaks, and we're 60 years into this thing, not 200 years into this thing like some. What are we grabbing back here?
This was saved out of the old bass offices for me.
Is that the whole course?
That's it. Signed by all of them.
Yep. That's the whole course. And there were all sorts of nightmare scenarios on the whole course versus who you drew and what hole you were supposed to be in, and guys who complained about that. But it was cool. It was innovative. It was unique. Like I've never been opposed to the format changes. I've never been opposed to that. I mean, if you look at it, the Elite Series, it started in 2006. We're now entering the 14th, 15th year of the Bassmaster Elite Series. That is by far the longest running consecutive same format name trail that's been in existence in professional fishing history.
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, let's talk about something else.
All right.
How about Greg Gallagher's 10-15?
Okay, yeah, you want to talk about a 55-gallon drum? That made the Bass Cat Live well look tiny, Rick. Did you see him pulling that thing out? Like the shot of just the head and the body?
I've got a video of him weighing it where it weighed. They sent me the video when they caught it.
When did did he personally send it to you? Like, how did you actually hear about it?
I wanted my rep up there to send it to me because Clemens Marine's our dealer up there, and they're jumping into the bass side. They're a really big runabout and recreational dealer, and they're jumping into the bass side. So they've got a couple of Jaguars, and Greg was in one of those Jaguars when he caught that fish.
Oh, that was out of a Jaguar too.
Yeah. So they were both boats were out fishing that day with Clemens. Clemens are big bass anglers. They just love to fish, but they really weren't in the bass market. So they've jumped into the bass market the last couple of years and the walleye market, and they're going to try and sell some walleye and bass boats. They're doing a really good job, but one of the guys they've taken care of was Greg, and they were out there and they caught that. I've got it on video, weighed 10-16, so 10-15 is pretty close, huh?
I mean, dude, that thing was a freak.
Amazing.
Are you a smallmouth guy? Do you like that? I don't think we've ever talked about the smallmouth
up there. Well, this is a 7. That's a 712 on.
Wow. Where's that from? Can you say?
Up there in the great place of Wisconsin, up there in the Thumb on Door County.
Oh, okay.
Man. So it's up there in the bay, Sturgeon Bay.
I just did a thing with Mercer that we put it out on his channel there, and we did like a 15-minute argument on whether we'll see another 10-pounder in the next 5 years, and I said no. I don't think we will.
You know, St. Clair, it's going to come out of that upper end of Erie, I think, if they do, because there's so much water there. You know, I think the fish in Michigan, I don't think it's going to come on Michigan. I just don't think it's going to come out of Green Bay. But I think Ohio could produce it if we. There's just so much open water in areas that they don't get to spawn and do things that people can't fish.
Yeah.
And I don't. Michigan's got a lot of that, but the big fish, I think, is going to come out. It's not going to be a St. Clair, you know, the river. I think it's going to be the Detroit River thing. I think it's going to come out of. They're going to come out of Erie if we ever see another.
See, my thing is, if you do the math, there's like not a very big window for that, Rick. Like, that's my only thing to where I think, so take all the water, even if you know where it is. Let's say you can narrow. There's someone on BTL who's like, hey, I know where Randy Van Dam caught his. I think I know where they caught theirs. There's been a couple 8s. I've narrowed it down to this 5 or 8 mile circle where like all these freaks have come out of. But then, you know, I was like I said, I was talking the other day, and I'm like, okay, so it's not going to be a summer fish, and you can't fish for them early in the year because it's a closed season. So it's going to have to be a fall fish when it's packed on the feed, right? So you're talking October, September, October.
They're already really into the spawn, really, when they open the season up.
Right. So you're talking October, November, depending on when you get, well, that time of year up there, windy, massive. I mean, that's why it's hard. Remember when Bass tried to go up there?
There is potential to catch one on the feed if they have a cold season.
Okay.
Yeah, so, you know, if they had a cool season and let's say spawn got held up or a late moon where it was the end of June, there is potential to do that. But, you know, I'm still with you. I think it's going to be in that circle of Ohio, up Erie.
That's what Jim was saying. Jim was saying that on the show.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be in that circle up there, which we're actually going to hurt it now because we're talking about it.
No. So listen to this. So let's just do October and the first half of November. Let's just say that's probably when it'll be caught, like where this one was caught. So you're talking 45 days out of the entire year. So out of those 45 days, let's just wash half of them.
Yeah, well, it's actually going to be uglier than that because 2 things happen up there. One's wind, and the other's weather.
Yeah.
So the weather is going to be ridiculous. I mean, those guys will fish till the ice is in. They'll crush ice to go. So there's going to take a lot of the people out. So it's going to be really low odds that it ever gets beat. I think it will someday.
Yeah.
I don't know when. And I think the fish are there to do it. But how old is a 10-pound fish?
They estimated that it was between 15 and 17 years old, which I thought was shockingly young. I thought it'd be like tortoise age. They'd be like, this fish was 51.
Yeah. They're saying that it's going to be a 20, 25-year-old fish to beat it. It's what a couple of biologists have said.
That's kind of cool, though, that they caught it out of a cat.
Well, it was lucky, but I'm taking it.
I know.
No, it was cool. I mean, we're glad to have them. They're good guys up there at Clemens, and they're working hard. So that's all you can ask out of them, you know. They want to be engaged in the sport. And obviously, they're anglers, you know.
Mm-hmm. And where are they based out of?
Out of Ohio on the south side of Erie.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on it right now. Clemens, Clemens, Clemens Boats. Since 1966.
Yeah, it's like I said, they're an old recreational boat dealer, and they're right on the lake. They've got full facilities, you know, to store and everything. So.
Oh, there it is, Bass Cat.
Yeah. But that was pretty cool of them to have that. And I got that video from our rep up there, Brett King. Brett's a pretty good guy, and he's a professional walleye guy also, so he was pretty impressed. And he's kind of having to adopt the bass ways a little bit, but he sells a lot of Yarcraft up there.
Mm-hmm. What else you got?
That's about it. I didn't have much else on my list to talk about.
Man, you keep mentioning all these guys, so now I want to get Glebe on the show. You think he'd be up for it?
Yeah, Glebe's not. He'd probably be up for it. You visit with him. I probably wouldn't know if you'd make a whole show out of Glebe, but you talk about what he did. And everybody out west wants to talk about Dobbins because that's today's genre, today's generation. I mean, I don't even know how many boats and trucks Glebe won.
You mentioned Tucker. Was that Mark Tucker you were talking about?
Yeah.
Dude, we need to have him back on. Remember that? I mean, last time when he won that on that slowly sinking Rogue there to get back in the Classic there after he'd retired from the Elite Series.
Yeah, Mark's laying concrete today. He's a good guy, man.
Yeah, I'd like to get him back on. You mentioned Robert Lee.
Yeah, Robert's out of fishing a little bit. His boy Hayden's fishing out west now. That's third generation.
Wow. Anyway,
Hayden's
I always
good
end
young
up
man.
with like
Really
a
doing
month
a
of
good job.
shows. Month of shows
He had
after
a really
you come
good
on.
event. Actually, he did all right the other day. He was close to the cut out there on the Pro-Am Championship for Wild West the other day. So Hayden's a good angler.
If you guys want more information on the West and the different shows, a couple months ago I did a show with Ken Ma, and Ken came on and literally for 30 minutes talked about the Wild West, the format that's going on out there, the Toyota series. I think he did mention the ABAs out there, and then the One Bass, and just kind of everything that's going on the West Coast. Really kind of put it into perspective. Some really cool stuff they're doing out there. So worth a listen.
Like
to.
I said, we're seeing growth out there for the first time, and I mean, I go all the way back to Gary Marshall, and North Hollywood Marine was a big deal out there, and that was a long time before you. And those were the big sticks out there back in the day, and the West has never been that big a market, but it's kind of nice to see it growing.
Yep. You gonna be at the Classic with all the cats?
Red Crest and the Classic.
Okay. Well, I'll probably see it both then.
We'll see you before then somewhere.
Yeah.
Yep. You keeping your eye on young guys, right?
Yeah. Who are you keeping your eye on now these days? Because the guys that I think are young guys are like in their 30s now, Rick, which that snuck up on me real quick with like Jordan and Jacob and Justin, Bertrand, who just won. Like they're like in their 30s now. And now like the young guys are like really young.
Yeah, we've got some, of course, you look at what's happened with college and bringing kids out of college. And, you look at guys, there's a lot of them in college. Of course, Rick up there at Drury's done a great job building a team. And he's really done a wonderful job. He left the Bass Pro Scenario Nitro, and he's built a heck of a team up there at Drury. But, I look at these young kids up like Jerry Brumbaugh and some of the ones that are coming into the sport right now. And then I look at probably the one that I think sticks out the most to me today coming out of high school right now is Trey McKinney.
Trey McKinney.
Yeah, there's another boy down in Texas that's really strong. There's another one.
Rick Emmett's the head coach of Drury.
Yeah.
I know you said Rick, but I just wanted to make sure. It's Rick Emmett.
I figured you knew that.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, Rick left Bass Pro, and he run pro team over there, and now he's at Drury. And he's got a bang up team, Sam.
Oh yeah, they got a full on website and all sorts of stuff on there. Like it's like so. Deal. Yeah, it's like a whole bass fishing website.
Yeah, you want to go to Stephen F. Austin or one of those Dallas Baptists and look at what some of the teams are doing. But
yeah,
the Auburn, of course, is the noted team in the sport. But Rick's doing a good job.
All right, out of high school, who was it? Who you said out of high school that?
I like Trey McKinney.
Okay.
There's another young man, his name escapes me right now, out of Texas. It's really strong. He's a high school angler.
Oh, did Trey McKinney fish the NPFL this year?
Don't think he did. Maybe he did. I think that's a different McKinney.
Okay. He's out of Illinois.
Yeah.
He's got his own website too.
Mom and dad support him. Great deal.
All right. I'll have to check that out. I mean, I was looking at it. I'm shocked. So if you look at anglers out of Illinois, and I'm sure you could name some more. Obviously, Chad Morgenthaler, Carbondale, Illinois, Southern Illinois, like that.
A rare bird coming out of Illinois.
Yeah, but I remember. Do you remember Doc Merkin?
Yeah,
Doc Merkin was out of Illinois.
Doc about 4 months ago.
Really? What's he up to? I always liked him. He always had the butt seat and the gold rim glasses.
Yeah,
Always very well put together.
He's working 2 days a week for his son, who has his vet practice. He drives in about 90 miles to go to work, or 2 hours to go to work, and works 2 days a week. He's a vet.
Okay, that's the doc. Trey's. Yeah, I'm looking at Trey. Yeah, Trey McKinney's channel, TreyMcKinneyFishing.com, and it's like up to date and rolling too. That's a very
Joe Verbick died about a year ago, but Joe Verbick's first guy in Illinois to win a Bassmaster event.
And he was from Illinois?
Yeah, 1969 won Seminole.
What was his name?
Joe Verbeck.
I did not know about that.
Yeah.
And then there's been several other Illinois guys. I don't want to leave them out. But as far as like a juggernaut, like Illinois angler that is, classics, AOYs, major multiple wins, kind of a vacant state.
It's a barren state. I remember you talk about stories, and so we had a guy named, we're running way long here, Matt, but we had a guy that was a friend of mine. He worked for Grandpa Seabold, which was Billy Seabold's dad at Granite City Boat and Motor, and then transferred over when Bob Richardson bought Granite City Boat and Motor. His name was John Kramer. And at the time, John was fishing a bait, and he drew a guy named Rick Clunn on Wren Lake. And so John was fishing with Rick, and he is catching them on this bait that nobody knew about. And that bait today, and Rick Clunn won the event on it, called a lunker lure.
The buzzbait.
Buzzbait.
Flat rubber. Jeffrey's big
Actually, it was not even rubber yet. It was vinyl skirts back then, yeah. Rubber skirts, vinyl skirts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that was, but John came out of Illinois, and actually there's a lot of stuff came out of Illinois that people don't realize, and they don't have much there. Guntersville is the known deal. Rayburn is, of course, I think it's the kingdom. And then you've got Rend and Carlisle and Crab Orchard, and
yeah,
not much in Illinois. So a lot of the Illinois guys wind up going to K-Lake.
Yep. Yeah, that's like 4.5 hours away. It's really like, I grew up in central Illinois, Rick. Decatur, Illinois is where I grew up, fish for the Assumption Bass Club, and it felt like in the middle of nowhere. But, now I look back and I'm like, dude, you're like 5 hours, 5.5, 6 hours from St. Clair. You're like 4.5, 5 hours from Kentucky Lake. You're 6.5, 7 hours from in Ohio there at Lake Erie. I'm like, you're just, I tell my buddies there, I'm like, you're a drive away. And they're like, yeah, well, you're jaded because you drive all over the country. They're like, 7 hours is a long way. I'm like, that's like an afternoon.
Illinois that has a lot of high quality, and that's, you wind up where even when they do catch them, they catch them on occasion. But actually they're catching some fish on some of those lakes in Illinois now. They've kind of come alive.
That's good stuff. All right, I'm going to let you get back to work. Like I said, we could do this. I would definitely want to get you back on in sometime during the first quarter of 2023 if you're willing to go for round 2, unless you want to just keep going here.
We'll touch base and we'll get together again. Only thing that's going to kill Illinois, Matt, is what the conservation department's done with it, putting a
that's not
their events. So that's one of the things in Illinois that's hurting them right now.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's worth a 5-minute talk here. So Terry Brown is the one that brought this up. Long time Wired to Fish. He's from Illinois, Bloomington area there. One of the first guys that I ever got to know in the industry. And he writes for the Pantograph, which is a newspaper there, the outdoors section in Illinois. And I keep up with his column. So basically they found some law or rule that was like put into place like 10 or 20 years ago where there was supposed to be some sort of tax or fee or something on these recreational tournaments out of ramps that were owned by the state. Right. And they have never enforced it. They've never utilized it. They've never done anything. So all of a sudden over they're calling it a fee, but what they're doing, and they're systematically doing it. And I'm afraid this is not good for tournament fishing, is they're systematically basically regulating fishing tournaments out of these lakes if you're planning on use one of these ramps. Between taking
they're
percentages, it's bad.
They're keeping like 10% of the fees or something, and it's a fee-based. It's not fee-based, so it's not like this much for this many boats and this much for this many boats. It's strictly a percentage, so there's no doubt it's a tax. So the argument goes, is it a tax or is it a fee? Well, it's a tax. And
it's a percentage of the purse.
Right. And so they're basically keeping it, and that's just a tax. So that's where I think Rick Burns at AC Tournaments and I think Terry Brown some more need to get together and continue to challenge it. It'll happen, but that's really hurting hurting Illinois on their base right now.
I agree. The other thing I like about Illinois, I went back and fished a couple of the tournaments there, or Wednesday nighters last year on my way up north, and you can get from one end to the other in most of those lakes pretty quick.
They're not very big.
No, but there's a lot of good people there. A lot of diehard bass fishermen there that follow the sport, and actually met a couple of the guys that were fishing as a co-angler in the Opens this year. So that's good stuff, Rick.
We talked way long, plenty.
Heck, I enjoyed it. It does not feel like an hour and 52 minutes. Hopefully you're of the same.
Yeah, I looked up the clock a while ago and said, man, we've been on for a while.
I know, but I love it. History, up to date. I learned a lot. I got a list of guys that I want to contact to get them on the list too. So.
All right.
Thanks, Rick.
Holler, man.
Will do. See ya.
Thank you.
All right, that was Rick Pearson. Probably one of the longest shows we've done this year. But like I said, it's a podcast that I run and go however long we want. So we decided to go an hour and 52 minutes. We're going to go even longer because we're going to take our final break of the show, and when we come back, we're going to preview what we have going on for the rest of the week, take some questions if you have any, wrap things up. This is BTL on a chilly Monday. It's finally getting cold here after I complained about how it's not getting cold. Now it's too cold, and I'm complaining about it. BTL on a Monday. We will be back right after this.
Are you looking to install your own fishing electronics? Well, the Bass Tank is here to help you. The solution is the Bass Tank Power Harness. It takes the guesswork out of installation. No more voltage issues or interference. Designed by an engineer so that you can get professional results right there in your own garage. Installation done right with the help of the Bass Tank Power Harness. You can feel confident knowing that your installation was done right. The Bass Tank Power Harness. Give us a call or order yours today at thebasstank.com.
Get the best patterns backed by tournament data. Start by finding the best 10% of your lake. Know exactly what to look for and what to throw. After that, just put them in the boat. Try the Deep Dive app today.
Look at that beast right there.
Have you considered purchasing new electronics for your rig? The type of mounts you choose to protect your investment should be part of the decision-making process. No matter if you prefer 1, 2, or 3 graphs up front, Beatdown Outdoors has a solution for you. Adjustable, versatile, rigid, and made in the USA. What's your ultimate electronics setup? Check out the full selection of Beatdown Outdoors products by visiting beatdownoutdoors.com.
The new Android series is the peak of the Denali lineup and offers the ultimate Denali experience. The Android series features 36-ton multi-directional graphite combined with interlock blank technology for added strength. Each rod is outfitted with Royal titanium guides that will not fail. The blank is fitted into an easy-touch, soft-feel EVA foam grip with exposed blank reel seat. This all allows the Android to transmit every movement of your bait and even the most subtle bites. The Android series is the finest rod Denali has ever made and offers an angler the ultimate fishing experience with a limited lifetime warranty. See the full lineup of Android rods at denalirods.com. Vibrating jigs are a great choice for any time of year, and the Kamikaze Swim-On is a perfect match for any vibrating jig. 2 sizes and the unique tail design gives it a bait fish profile and a great swimming action for realism. There are 17 colors. See them all at bigbitebaits.com.
The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got sparkle shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte sexy shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte sexy shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Combining one of the most popular hook styles with Gamakatsu's beefier Superline offering, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend delivers the strength necessary to target big fish in heavy cover. Well suited for braided line and heavier fluorocarbon, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend is built using stronger Superline wire that allows anglers to easily fish a finesse worm around heavy cover. The round bend offers a larger bite area, perfect for any worm presentation, while increasing your hookup ratios. The newly enhanced Z-Bend holds your plastics on the hook longer, reducing the number of pull-offs and reducing damage to plastics. Available in 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, this is the most durable worm hook, designed for heavier lines that hold your bait on longer.
Preparation is key to success. And that preparation starts well before you ever hit the water. You're only as strong as your connection to the fish, and your line is that critical connection. Confidence in your line every minute of every day on the water is a necessity, and failure, it's not an option. Sunline makes the fluorocarbon, nylon, and braided lines to give you the strength to guarantee your confidence.
All right. Welcome back. Wrapping things up on a Monday. Reading some comments here. There's one more fish. Matt, I fished my STS at Sturgeon Bay for the first time in rough water. Caught a 5-pound smallmouth. There was a reason for handling rough water. He signed my boat. Please thank him for me. I'm assuming that Rick signed his STS. So one of the things I want to mention, I mentioned last week, I really didn't go into detail about my level of anxiety over this, so to speak. So podcasting, the fishing stuff, the tournaments live, one of the things that I really haven't dabbled a lot in is the TV side of it. And I had the opportunity to film my first TV show with Let's Talk Fish with Andrew Upshaw and what he does over there. And I know he runs it. You can go to their YouTube site and watch all of them. And, you know, Todd's filled in and done a couple. Bradley Hallman's done one. So I watched a bunch, but I went to go do a crappie one on Lake Eufaula. Dude, I have a completely newfound respect for the TV show guys. Like the Mercer, the Zona, what Andrew's doing, the guys who film the TV shows. Like, it was... I literally was probably more nervous like doing that as far as getting ready and doing it. You know, you got the cameraman that shows up, he jumps in the boat. It's your responsibility to do it all. It was a totally different vibe. And one of the things that I want to do before the end of the year is get Andrew on to talk about that show, because as I room and talk with him over the course of the year, you know, we would be at open events, and he'd get there a day earlier, stay a day, and he'd be like, yeah, I got to go film a TV show for this and this. And he'd come back, yeah, it went well, or boy, it was tough. Like the way that he is able to rack that out after having been a part of it, and you get the mic on and talk, totally different vibe than anything else I'd done in the industry, but I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's going to come out till next year. I ended up catching a few nice ones on the long pole, but it is kind of crappie season. So we got a cool show. Guy's been on the show a couple times. Once with Cody Meyer, he was actually practicing with him, spending some time up north, and then once he was the guest. But Tristan McCormick, back in the Bassmaster Classic after winning on Hartwell. But one of the things that I don't think has been really talked about, expanded on enough, is the fact that he did all this as the college bass representative through the Bassmaster College program. After winning the bracket, getting in last year's Classic, got entries into all 9 opens this year, won that last one, got back in, made a lot of money, has some options into next year. So we're going to talk about what he's going to do. I also was on like Strike King's website, and he's like front and center on that when you log on to Strike King. So for a 24-year-old guy, 22, 23, 24, somewhere around that, he's got the open win. He's going to back-to-back Bassmaster Classics. expect him to be a factor in Tennessee for this Classic. So we'll have him on for the duration of the show tomorrow. Also very active in the industry. Smart. He's going to be around for a long time, and obviously is showing his level of talent on the water. And then it is the return. We've got 10-pounders and all sorts of questions, and there's only one man who can answer them, and that is Ken Duke. So Ken Duke comes on Wednesday, Thursday, big announcement with Frank Scalish on day 4, number 93, I believe. We're marching towards this very specific number, and I think Thursday we'll be able to announce what will happen once we get to show 100. And then some cool stuff going on into the Thanksgiving holiday break. I am working is on my to-do list. I actually got a email about that during the show as far as apparel, both on the day 4 and the Bass Talk live side, and I'll be catching up on a bunch of stuff afterwards. So big shout out to Rick Pierce. He gave his top 3 of anglers. He is definitely in the top 3 in the entire industry of knowledge and passion. No doubt about that. So big shout out to Rick for taking time off. Also, all the listeners, viewers, great feedback with that. Tomorrow, as I get the music queued up here, Tristan McCormick on BTL. That's it. Thanks for sticking around for 2 hours of BTL on a Monday. We'll talk to everybody tomorrow.